Um, there's so many different things, but I want you to draw a cat for me. No. I want you to listen, and you can write down and take notes if you want, but ultimately at the end of it, I want to know what you heard. Because what I say and what you hear can often mean completely different things. And so one of the goals and huge parts of what we are trying to do with Adonai Restoration is move into an area where everybody can receive what we're trying to give them. And in the revelation of everything that's happened, as specifically probably in the last couple days, since Tuesday, I guess, is that? Yeah, Tuesday. I want to see what stands out. I want to see what comes together, because ultimately what I'm looking for is the constants. The things that, I can see that everybody is seeing at the same time. So that means that it is able to go beyond somebody who likes to listen to somebody that can receive an information from me, And it is so much that I'm going to try and shorten it and give you the Cliff Notes, which are insanely long. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my testimony with you from when we started the new journey of building the website and all that stuff, and then kind of bring you current to where we're at today and show you through my testimony and other people's testimonies that have been a part of it, what God is doing and how that translates to restoration. And it's beyond theology. It's beyond you. Welcome you, please. Whatever I say, go back and test it. Go back and test it and see, because I haven't 100% got to that position yet. We have done it a lot, but not 100%. I have not found anything outside that would say right, wrong, or indifferent. And ultimately, I'm not going to be sharing with you any scripture and or anything about that, but it should ring true to everything you know about recovery and God up to this point, without me ever, proving it to you. Because what I've come to find is that the greatest thing in which we have is our testimony. Okay? Are you recording? Okay. And our testimony is proof of restoration and God. And so we should never have to share, where we worship or how we worship in a testimony for someone to be able to receive what God has for them in that testimony. And so the only thing that I've really done recently is, in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, is research scripturally, Hebrew, Greek, back and forth, the word testimony. And basically what it is, an account of whatever it is it's a testimony of. And so, for the most part, it means the same thing. In the Hebrew, though, it is more of that court setting, is where you're going to hear or see the words that are used for testimony. And so our goal was to expand outside of the Adonai Foundation and Adonai House. Because Robin and I both know that there is a lot more pain out there other than drugs and alcohol. That forces people into positions that don't allow them to live the life that was created for them. But because it usually takes a tremendous amount of pain for someone to change, they don't ever find themselves in the proper position to accept what's going on in their life. Therefore, they're never introduced to principles that will allow them to live in complete freedom and ultimately live a life that is greater than anything that they could ever had expected. And so we are the lucky ones, for whatever reason, in addiction, is that in this world it crushes you in such a way that it puts so much light on you that you get in so much pain that you have no place else to go but ask for help. And you get to learn, the 12 steps. You get to learn the principles that God's written on your heart. You get to go to Torah. Get to go to meetings. You've heard testimonies, and you get to see things differently than most people do or ever will get to. So when we set out on the journey, the idea was, ultimately that's our goal, and we know that when we facilitate an environment for people to attain that position, something very unique happens. What that uniqueness is a community, but it's greater than that. It's an authentic community where individuals feel like they can interact with complete authenticity and receive help from each other throughout their life without being nervous about what I might mention to someone and do those types of things, because everyone there is authentic. And if what I have found by watching what happens here is that if an individual is not authentic about their desires to change, then they don't last very long. Or they're not supposed to if the community is truly authentic. And so there were times since we've started the Adonai House that because of my lack of understanding of my position, it allowed an atmosphere that was not 100% authentic here, which allowed individuals to stay in the community longer than they should have. But when I am engaged with myself with complete authenticity, seeing my position and acting out in obedience, whatever that is, it forces other people to either get authentic or get out of the way. And in that atmosphere is when we have the opportunity to do life together and learn from each other's testimonies, experience strength and hope. And that positioning allows us to change in life. And so that was the goal, right? And one goal. Eric and I started the website, started putting content on it, doing different things, and it's kind of like deconstruction, taking apart something and getting rid of everything that you don't think is valid for whatever reason. so that it can present authenticity in what you're trying to accomplish. And so that was kind of an interesting ride. And till recently, until last week, and Tuesday, God began to now bring it all back together for us in such a way that has been completely mind-blowing. I have never known what would be the result of my decision to get authentic and position myself in such a way that someone else could pour into me. I had no clue what would happen. But because of the pain, I was willing to do it. But the truth is that we all have pain. And it may not be an addiction that can kill us right away. And so what God has shown us here in the last couple of days is just phenomenal. But I've been trying to be more authentic in the way in which I present who I am and what we do to people that are so far away from any kind of theological understanding, it's not even funny, and see what happens. See if God works. And see if these things hold true and how they hold true and why. And I'm not a smart guy, that's for sure. I've had to work extra hard at anything that had to do with books, knowledge, school. You know, some of y'all were here when I went to college, was enrolled and all that. And, I mean, it was very hard for me. Always has been my whole life. So to understand things on an intellectual level and then be able to present them has been like this weird thing that I am not used to. And then have it all come together. But in the goal of trying to understand what God is calling us to do, I wanted to be 100% authentic in, those desires. And that authenticity has to lie in where God brought me into my journey. So I had to go back and look at things differently and see where I was at and how I got in and what has happened and then question things like my marriage to Robin and see if that was biblical or not. To see if that was God's will or was it mine. So when I say I've gone back, I mean I've gone back and looked at things in a whole new light so that I could understand what God was trying to do moving forward. The whole goal is to present atmospheres that allow individuals the opportunity to experience authentic community. And in that, people change. But not everybody jumps into the Adonai house because they want to change. Matter of fact, I don't know anybody that wants to change. Even most of you, even when you made that decision and I asked you, are you willing to do whatever it takes? You accepted it for the moment, but you weren't 100% sure exactly what that looked like until you got into it. And so the desire was there for the moment, for the immediate release of the pain that you may have been in, but once you got into it, then there's always a step back of, wow, I had no idea that this is what it meant to be willing to do whatever it takes. And then there's a process of, at least in this environment, where a lot of people will get rid of themselves through that. Well, I don't think change in life has to be so abrupt and in your face. So we started to deconstruct everything that pushes people away from the atmosphere? You know, was it the word Jesus? Is it the word law? Is it obedience? Is it change? What is it? And to be honest with you, it's a whole bunch of different things. You know? So with my willingness to go to the next level and pushing, Joe said, you need to get in a different position that you haven't been in a long time. I want you to go over here and receive some information from somebody, no matter how much it costs or what it takes from you, so that we can see if we can move forward somehow. And that acceptance of that position and my desire to move out of the pain of not understanding what God's plan is next gave me the ability to be obedient and get in that position. And so what I want to share with you is that this is always going to begin with me and end with me. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with the Adonai Foundation. It has nothing to do with anybody else. It was profound, for me anyway, to understand that and then to see how this all comes together. And so my willingness to get in that position opened my eyes and see things in a different way in which I haven't seen in a long time. Because it was about me. It wasn't about anybody else. And through that process, there was some restoration, and there was some revelation, and there was some knowledge that came through it. And one of those things that I learned was that I never really wrapped my head around. I mean, Mike can come and teach us a lot of neat things, and there's some distraction, but I can tell you what I've taken away completely and wholly from it is an understanding that God has given us free will from thought moving forward. And so for me to understand that, I had to live it out and begin to apply what my understanding of that was to my current life and situations and issues. And so I did. Everything from what's next to what's next after cancer to how are we going to continue to move forward. How's Robin going to be a part of what's going on? How does it affect the Adonai house? How does it affect my relationship with other individuals in the religious community? I mean, just incredible amount of questions that it presented. But what I've realized is that all I'm responsible for is showing up and giving my testimony. That provision in itself, the outcome was not mine, nor will it ever be, because I don't know how it will end up. I might have hopes and dreams and desires and wishes and things like that, but I can tell you that if I would have taken the time to write down how I would have thought each quarter of my life was going to end up, it wouldn't be sitting here today. But yet, along that process and willingness to get into position and always striving for some understanding in my own life so that I could be in the right place so that God could use me for His purpose and His glory, He has allowed things that may not line up or make sense in the physical world, but He has provided nonetheless. And so, in case you're wondering, the conversation started with me and Eric sitting down talking about his next phase of life. He's getting betrothed. What does that mean? You know, put everything else behind. What does that mean? So what do I have to give him at that moment in time? My testimony of what Robin and I went through when we got married. And so we're sitting there sharing that, and God starts to open my mind to see things in this different way about that road of, you know, working on 11 years now of trying to get in the right position. And then I said, well, was it that I was trying to find the right religion and the right way to worship my God so that I could get there? I mean, what was it all about? And most of it was all about survival of getting through the next thing that God wanted us to go through. Because one of the issues in my life, character traits, character defects, is that I have always been somebody who is not willing or okay with the standard. I've always been someone that has pushed the envelope, whatever it is, whatever I've done, for a desire for something greater, for something better. And then as I began in ministry and recovery, that desire for other people to experience that same thing was what always kept me in line, was my purpose, was to help people experience that same type of thing. And so I spent a lot of time trying to understand where I was supposed to be. I was recovered, you know, and then married. I was in a Baptist church setting with everything surrounded me that I thought was supposed to be true and right. And it was painful, some of it, but at the end of the day, we all came through it in such a way that we always grew greater from it. And so what I understood at that moment was it was my willing to get in a position where I was okay with not knowing how to get through what was coming next. And I was willing to listen to the people that God had placed in my life, along with my understanding of His Scripture based on my testimony. Because at the end of the day, we can get up and talk about different ways to worship, but if you've lived out a certain way, its fruit should show for the way in which you lived it out, and there shouldn't have to be any other justification to make it so. So in the process of trying to understand all this, because a lot of it honestly has been my alignment with another community, marriage, and my lack of spiritual leadership, we had never been able to come together and see more clearly and to see what God was doing, which just brought me back to the understanding that it simply began and ended with me, and it wasn't about it wasn't about serving God the right way in the right setting as much as it was about getting in the right position so that I could understand it, so that I could see what I needed to do to move forward, to see how I could be used or to see how we could grow. And I found that by doing that authentically, people's lives continued to change. And so getting away completely from anything else other than I know has been the goal of the last week. In the realization of my requirement with my relationship with my God requires me to get in such a position that is a vulnerable place that is constantly forcing me to do one thing, that's accept what I need to change and then live it out in obedience. Why? So that when I do, using the tools that He has given me, whatever it is, community, literature, new ways of thinking, that He could be Christ, that I could be Christ in the flesh. And be in positions where I was completely out of control, yet He could do what He needed to do. And those things only make sense when you have the proof of the testimony that comes behind it. In recovery and in life, over the last 11 years, I have found myself in positions of trying to debate what is right and what is best. And trying to convince people that this way or that way is better. And then would be reeled back and live it out, be forced to live it out in obedience in my own life. And, the ebb and flow of that continued. And so what God has shown us and shown me here recently is that if I'm not willing to be in a position of change and acceptance, then I cannot be used by Him. I mean, I could be, He's God, but ultimately He'll use someone else because He uses the least of us to do these major things. He's used all of you around this table to do incredible things that you never had any idea what was going on, but ultimately what is the pivotal point of your obedience of getting in line in this journey has forced many people around you to change their lives. And in that change comes happiness. And it comes a comfort, maybe not like in a physical sense as much as a spiritual sense, where you begin to be okay to live transparently and be okay with who you are and accept your role and position in life today based on what God's calling you to do. So that's kind of profound in a way, because there's so many people that are looking for happiness, and I'm trying to put them in a position of restoration. It doesn't have to be as confusing as theology, and it certainly isn't as easy as saying a magical prayer and expecting something to happen. So how could we deliver our message through different platforms, whether it be through the website, whether it be through life restoration plans, continuing to do what we are doing, or being willing to go out and speak to people? Why in the world would churches allow someone like me to speak if I was ultimately there in my heart to debate with them what was right or wrong in the way in which they live their life? Because I have a reputation in this town of being that guy. And the reality is that people don't want authentic community, and they don't want to change because it's hard. An authentic community requires you to get naked around people that you don't want to, or you think may have some sort of control over your future. And I thought, well, that definitely rings true to me about my own personal life and recovery, and I can certainly understand that, and I've seen it play out in so many other people's lives. The more authentic and transparent they got, the happier they got, and the more things worked out for them. Even if it jeopardized their position in the world based on the way in which the world works. But if we say that we believe in this God, and we believe in His law, and we believe that it is written into our hearts, how do we get into such a position to, allow other people to experience that same thing without putting them in a position of defense of the same thing that they've always heard? And no, it doesn't work. Interestingly enough, I've seen a lot of really shoddy attempts at authenticity this week. Christ Fellowship currently has a picture up of being a church of the city with its multiracial community, shown by mostly kids of the pastor. And then if you click that, it shows our community. I thought, well, isn't that bad? I think it was that picture y'all did for one of their 4-year or something, holding up the stuff. I said, that's definitely not authentic. Because we're not even there anymore. So what are they trying to show? So what I've been trying to do really has nothing to do with you, everything to do with me, and authentically live out my life with God based on my own understanding of His Word and the way in which He's called me to live my life, with the fruit of my testimony to show it. And our goal is to help people overcome things outside of addiction. Robin has an incredible ability to speak to people on a small level as well as large, as well as through Facebook or anything else, as you might have seen over the last week. Usually she will put something on Facebook about Adonai, and it's Snoresville. Put something on about Cross, and we got 300 likes in 10 minutes. But last week she shared in an authentic way about what God was doing in her life, and suddenly she had 300 likes and 40 comments from people that we have not spoken to or touched in a long time. That instigated a number of different things that I don't even know to its fullest yet, but I'd say at least 3 or 4 interventions that people were scared about doing in their relatives' lives. But Robin's willingness to get authentic and talk about what God did in this particular situation allowed those people to get in the right position. So I said, well, what made that different? Well, I think most of the other times we were probably sharing some sort of money-raising thing or a church, we were at the church and talking good about the church or something like that, and people knew, based on their own experience, that those environments don't give them the security to get authentic and change. But so what was different? The post that Robin shared was simply her testimony. And suddenly, voila, there was all this movement. The other day, we're trying to build a concrete wall around the thing because our whole job has been turned upside down. And we've spent lots of time building it, the wall, and deconstructing what was built. And we were put in a position to do something that we didn't think was our responsibility, but yet we figured we'd do it anyway, right? Figure out how much concrete, find the concrete person to go there. And so I said, whatever, but I knew you guys were busy on Wednesday, so it had to be Thursday. And I was drawing the line. But suddenly God said, no, you need to be willing to be in that position based on your testimony. All right, so I'll make myself available. And what I thought was just going to be some time spending at home trying to get some rest and catch up and unclutter my own personal life so that I could be used and be more connected with God turned into an opportunity for Christ to show up in the flesh again with somebody that we all know in a way that I have never been able to share with him before because of my willingness to be obedient and then share my testimony. And part of my testimony is people's testimonies that have been around me. And I mean, it was nuts. And what came out of me was nothing of anything that I put together, that's for sure. Matter of fact, at one point, I had him in the corner of the yard with my finger in his chest. And I realized what I was doing and backed away. Like, oh crap, coming on a little strong or something here. But what I had seen just prior to that was my ability to affect his life simply by being there. That was authentic community, authentic accountability. Because his wife came around and he completely turned into something else. And I don't know what it was. I do know what it was. It was Christ in the flesh jumped in me and gave me words that I didn't have to be that to him in such a time. And it was crazy. And it was against everything in which the way in which I would have went about it, for sure. The guy has a lot of control over my security, you could say. But my desire for him to find restoration, not just in his own life, but in his family and the people around him, superseded everything that I, in the world, would never do, because it might put me in the position to change. And it was nuts. It was like an out-of-body experience. And I don't know what will happen from it, but what I do know is that it gave me another opportunity to share from experience, strength, and hope how an individual can change his life to maximize it, to get the most out of it, with never sharing or never saying anything that probably has pushed him away from getting in the position to allow it to happen up to this point. See, people are used to being confronted by the same thing over and over again. They've all heard about how Jesus loves them. That Jesus is love, and that all they have to do is say this verse and raise your hand and get baptized, and your life is going to change. But that's a lie. And so what I've seen is, as I move forward, I cannot participate in something that is not grounded in the truth based on what I know because of my own testimony. and put myself in a position so that He can use me in ways that I don't have the ability to be used. The whole goal has been to help other people get over tough things in life, because our heart hurts for people that are stuck in these things. But we didn't understand what the platform was to go outside of addiction. Because we're the lucky ones. Addiction's easy. We're a dime a dozen. This world's falling apart. Someone died today, yesterday, that was this close to the Adonai house. And you didn't get it. But how many people are out there that are getting ready to go through something before addiction? How many husbands are out there that just found out that their wife has breast cancer? What are they going to do? Start being obedient and going on Sunday and saying a prayer and their life's going to change? I don't think so. I don't know, but I do know that I can share my experience, strength, and hope based on my position going through it and how God brought us through that. One of the things that has caught my eye tremendously in the last couple of months going through this and looking at different organizations, religious organizations, and seeing how they operate and seeing how are they accomplishing what they say their mission is. How are they accomplishing it? And how are they then in it? Does it have the fruit? Or does it show, Part of that, part of us moving forward has been part of that. And the realization of knowing that I didn't have to start something because there's people already doing that. But one of the organizations, 119 Ministries, has caught my attention in so many different ways. One of them being their message and how simple it is and how easy it is to receive. The other part of it was their willingness to be humble and say that they're human and that they can be wrong and please test them. And the last thing was everything that comes from this ministry is free. That's a pretty authentic place to be. How the heck do they get the money to do what they do? I have no idea. I imagine God, being the great provider, has placed them in that position. So one of the thing is that model of being able to give away what God has given us so freely by sharing our testimony for free is spot on, whether it be in any format. And then investing in people's lives long term, if they want to position themselves to do it the way in which we got through it, based on our own understanding. And none of it had anything to do with the right way to worship God. Because what I know to be true is that when I accept my position of where I came into the journey, as well as where I am today, both physically and spiritually, I'm able to see what I need to do to have a better relationship with my Creator, so that I can change, so that I can be happier, even though life can still be very difficult. And I can position myself to be Christ, or let people see Christ, so that maybe they might position themselves to do the same thing. So what I know true to be in theoretically, or in theology anyway, is that you can't just do the work and expect your life to change. It might change for a little bit. And when you do good things will happen, because God created His world to have laws that happen no matter what. But it's when we're willing to then get into the position of acceptance that it's not our understanding of what's to do next, it's the people that He has placed around us, as well as our understanding of His truth, His Word, and applying that with a blind faith allows us to be in a position to experience the best that He has for us. And that's freedom from anything thought moving forward. So what Mike Jeffries taught me was, someone stole my brain. He taught me that oils help me get into other places quicker, into my memory. He scientifically showed me how a thought happens before an action that causes a feeling, which could control how I react to it. I thought that, well, that's some pretty good information. So aligned with what I know to be true based on God's Word and will, along with my testimony, which has brought me here, helped me realize that I did not have to be controlled by my thoughts, but I have to be in a position to accept them when they're lined up to God's Word in the way in which He's called me to live my life, and then act out in obedience with blind faith, asking Him to change my life. See, my goal, and what my sponsor has always told me, is, Jason, where can you be of most use to God? And so that has helped me along the way. Make mistakes, but still end up in the right place.